I'm personally very excited about the next session, which is hosted by Dr Juanita Weissensteiner. Juanita is currently the Principal Advisor, Pathways, at the New South Wales Office of Sport, where she works with sporting organisations, schools, coaches, athletes and parents across New South Wales. Prior to this role, Juanita led the Athlete Pathways and Development team at the Australian Institute of Sport, where we've just come from in our last session, and completed her PhD with Cricket Australia. Using her vast learnings and experience, Juanita will discuss what it takes to reach the top in basketball and how you can train your brain to assist your learning, preparation and performance. Just a few things about how the Zoom will run. Firstly, we've muted everyone, but please use the chat function if you have any questions, and hopefully we'll get to them at the end. You can send it as a direct message to myself if you wish, which is found at the NSW Christy Joffermans. Of course, if you don't want to be seen, please feel free to turn your camera off. One more sponsor before we cross to you, Juanita. We just want to acknowledge Spalding as the official ball partner to New South Wales, Basketball New South Wales. Thanks for Juanita for joining us. I'll just hand over to you now.
Excellent. Thank you, Christy. Fantastic. So I'll just get these slides up. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Hey, thanks, Adam. Thanks for the thumbs up, mate. So awesome to connect with you guys. As Christy said, we're going to talk a little bit about training your brain. And it's a really great time at the moment, with the COVID lockdown and you guys in school holidays. So it's an opportune time to look at this. So let's get into it straight away. All right. So I guess you guys would have loved watching the Olympics and also the Paralympics as well. And I've got Patrick Mills here, point guard for the Boomers, one of the top Aussie players. So I've got a question for all you guys to think of. So we're going to start with an exercise first. So what do you think are the skills and characteristics and factors that you think have underpinned performance at the highest level? Playing at the Olympics, playing at the Paralympics, playing at the World Champs. Someone like Patrick Mills. What do you think has been key to where they've gotten to? So I'm going to give you just a minute or two to type some responses in the chat. So whatever you think of, don't be shy, just pop it in the chat. Okay, I'm going to have a look at that. Fantastic. So I'm getting some things through. So I've got Isabel, fantastic, courage, determination. Kind, we've got determination, resilience. Emily, we've got mental toughness. Xavier, goal setting. Well, that's fantastic timing for the session today. That's excellent. Motivation, really important.
Positive mindset from Mia as well.
Oh, excellent.
And leadership from Lucas.
Great. Perseverance, practice, passion, being a team player, commitment. Gee, they're coming in thick and fast. This is great. Commitment again, consistency, excellent. Leadership, that's a very important one. Confidence.
Commitment.
Strength. And I guess that's physical strength as well as mental strength. Love of the game, a critically important one.
Loyalty.
Loyalty, excellent. Support from friends and family, really good one, really important. Loyalty, I love that. Resilience, good mindset, mentality, staying humble. Yeah, that's an awesome one, Joby. I like it. All right, now that's excellent, guys. You've done really well with that exercise. And I always love to start off with that exercise to get you thinking about what it takes, to get to the very top, because it is quite a long journey. And to perform at your peak, you've got to have a lot of things that mesh together and work together to get that performance, but also to support you getting there as well. So I've worked a lot with elite athletes, world champion athletes, Paralympic, Olympic champions. And I've got a bit of an idea of what it takes to get to the very top. And we can relate this to Patrick, and we can relate it to what it takes to get to the very top in basketball. And it's a really good place to start, because you need to look at where you want to go to. And you can start now, as we'll talk about. So a lot of these players have started off with really great developmental backgrounds. So they've had really great fundamental movement skills. They've done a lot of play in the backyard with their friends at school, being creative, trying different skills, different shots, playing with their friends under pressure. You know, that's a key aspect and key characteristic of a lot of our finest champions. They've sampled a lot of positions in basketball and other sports. They've done lots of quality practice with the teams, but also on their own, a lot of solitary practice. They've gone up in terms of competition to progress their skills. So they might play up an age group or two just to progress their skills. And as you touched on, they're going to have a supportive family, but also they've got to have great physicality, and that means balance, coordination, control. It's not just your strength and your power, and your engine, but it's also being able to recover well, you know, with your musculoskeletal side of things as well. Most importantly, and you guys touched on, it's about having great consistency in all your skills. So in basketball, you've got to draw on great anticipation of the opponent, the state of the game. You've got to make the right decision, and usually under pressure, under fatigue, and then you've got to execute your technique perfectly. And these top guys do that over and over again consistently under all conditions. That's a critical part of basketball. But also you've got to be a good person. You've got to be an ambassador for basketball, uphold positive values. You think of Patrick Mills, he's a primary example of a great ambassador. You've got to be really well organised, self-managed. You've got to have really good balance, sport-life balance. You've got to be able to deal with stressors that will come your way. And a key one, and we're going to touch on that today, is about having really good knowledge of what it takes to be an athlete. And this is about understanding about hydration and nutrition and injury prevention and recovery. But what you guys offered in that exercise really hits home with what the key thing is that I've found from all my research with elite athletes. And you've got to have a phenomenal mindset to get through the journey, but to perform at your best. And this is time and time again a key characteristic of our finest athletes. So they have a mix of personality. They can differ in personality, but what is key are these common things, common skills that they have. And we're going to touch on those today, but it includes being a good self-regulator, having good coping skills, having good emotional intelligence, using performance strategies, being mentally tough, showing grit. So there's a lot to it, but also having a love of the game and being a scholar of the sport. So a lot of these athletes, they're continually learning. You know, they're always learning to hone their craft, which is critically important. So what you can gather, I guess, from what I've got here is that there's not just one thing that helps you get to the top in basketball. You've got to have all these things working together. They have to mesh together to help you with your development and also your performance. And what is really key is your psychological skills, your mindset that really assists with all of these things to really help mesh and really hone it. So that's my key message to you today, to you guys. So the good news is, while it's challenging with COVID and you're unable to go to training and to compete, this is a primary time for you guys to work on these aspects at home, in your local neighbourhood right now, to really support you to get back on, you know, get ready to go back on the court, you know, at training and competing as well. So it'll stand you in really good stead. So having a strong psychological mindset is really important because, as you can see from this diagram I've got here that represents a developmental journey, say of Patrick, you know, right from very young all the way up to podium, you can see that it's not a straight linear line. You know, there's a lot of dips, and then there's peaks and there's dips. And now this is very characteristic of the developmental journey of a lot of our finest athletes. A lot of them had lots of setbacks, but that's motivated them, made them more determined, made them more hungry to then continue on. So just to say that even like COVID at the moment, which is a bit of a blip on the radar, you know, it seems like a setback, but it's also can be an opportunity as well to work on some things to get you ready for your training competition. As I touched on, a lot of finest athletes, things happen, not everything is under your control. So it's about controlling, the controllables is really, really important. And what's really important is what you learn and how you respond to where there might be a dip or an issue, a disappointment. And it's how you respond and grow with that, which is the key. And it's key for your basketball career, but also key for life, as well. And the love of basketball and playing with your friends, enjoying training, they're all the key things that will support you on this really long journey, which can take many, many years. They're key. And a lot of our finest athletes have looked back and said, you know what, it's not about money or a scholarship. It's about the love of the basketball and playing with their friends and enjoying the challenge. So my message to you today is to, back yourself, be patient and enjoy, every learning opportunity, every experience that you've got in and out of basketball. So today what we're going to look at is, and I've touched on it now already, about the great opportunity that you have right now with the lockdown and being at home and home neighbourhood. So we're going to talk about how you can train your brain. We'll touch on that lightly. We're going to review your goals and plan. So we're going to see how we can put some things into action for you to work on within the COVID lockdown period. We're going to talk about how to build your knowledge. So I'm going to share some really cool resources with you guys to have a look at and see if you can use some of that knowledge into your common practice with basketball. And then we're going to talk about the importance of staying connected and supported, which is critically important at this challenging time. So I touched on it before, having a strong psychological toolkit, that strong mindset is really important. And sometimes when I look at athletes on the podium, really you're seeing this phenomenal brain with the trophy. Really their mindset, their tenacity, their commitment, mental toughness has got what got them there. But as I shared, there's a lot of key things you can work on to train your brain and to really get it ready to help with your learning and your performance in basketball. So it's about effective goal setting that we're going to talk about today. It's about positive self-talk, so backing yourself, being positive. It's even about your breathing control, how you are in the moment, like how I am at the moment. Am I breathing slowly, taking the deep breaths in? How am I feeling in terms of my anxiety and arousal? It's about having great routines. So you look at Rafa Nadal, he's a great example of a routine. He's got routines and rituals that he probably would have before a game and then before points. So a lot of our finest athletes have really cool and quirky rituals and routines. So that can really help to get you in the moment and focused as well. It's about mindfulness, visualization, which I'm not going to touch on today, but I think is a key one for you guys to look at. And this is about practicing your techniques in your mind's eye. So practicing shooting a three-pointer, from your eye view, or watching you actually doing it and doing it time and time again, practicing in your mind's eye through visualization. And a lot of research has shown that that's a brilliant thing to do with your physical training. It is just as important to help with your performance. And then finally, we're going to talk a bit about self-regulation in a moment. Actually, we'll do that in the next slide. So the good news is that these are all practical skills and strategies that anyone can learn and you can implement and you can work on right now. And the good news is that this just won't help you for basketball, but as I touched on, it'll help you for life. And particularly with you guys going back to school, these are a lot of great skills and strategies that will help you with your return to school as well, you know, dealing with assignments, examinations, and so forth. Now, I've been really fortunate to work with some amazing people in my time. And this lady here on the right, and you guys might be a bit too young to recognise her, but this is Dr. Lauren Burns. And Lauren was a gold medalist at the Sydney Olympics in Taekwondo. I think she's our only Olympic gold medalist in Taekwondo. I know she was definitely our first. So I've been really fortunate to work with Lauren. And the great thing that Lauren did was she interviewed 14 of our finest world champion, Olympic and Paralympic champions. And she really got them to talk about what was key, you know, to their development and their performance. And what she found, the commonality of all those amazing athletes, and one of them was the 7-time world champion athlete, was that they were phenomenal self-regulators. And what I mean by that is that they were fully invested in their learning, but they were always looking at how they can hone what they were doing in all aspects of their preparation and their performance. So they're always about self-reflection, continual improvement, experimenting, and doing that over and over again. And you can see it in this loop. So these athletes were meticulous before an event in planning and preparing. During a game, for instance, in basketball, they were phenomenal in self-monitoring on how they were going. After the event, they were great in terms of their evaluation of how they went. And then finally, they looked at where there might be, you know, gaps that they can then work on for the next time around. So we found that these athletes did this cyclical type of approach, and this was called their self-regulation. So before an event in planning and preparing, as I touched on, they set SMART goals. They had a strategy that they were working towards. It wasn't by accident. They knew what they were doing because they had that planned strategy for a while. They did a lot of mental imagery. I spoke about visualization just before. So they did a lot of that to prepare them. During the event, they were really mindful. So very present in how they were, very self-aware. They knew how they were going in the moment, physiologically, mentally. After the event, they were great in terms of looking at the competition outcome, but also using other forms of feedback, like their own forms of feedback as well. And they were then comparing to their original plan and strategy, and maybe even comparing to, an opponent as well. But what they did, which was phenomenal, was after each training, after each competition, they stopped, they self-reflected, and they said, okay, I still need to work on this aspect. What are we going to do about it? Who do I need to talk to? And what are we going to do to meet that gap? And what the neat thing was once they worked out a solution, they then put it into step one, and just to see if it actually helped address that gap. So fantastic research that Lauren's got. And the key thing about this self-regulatory process is if you do this, and you start off, and I'll show you how to do it with some line of questioning. But if you do this time and time again over training and competition, after performance, it'll really help you to feel confident in what you're doing, and it'll really help with your effort and your self-belief as well. But the glue to all of this, and we're going to go through this right now, is about continually self-reflecting. And we're going to talk about that in the next 2 slides. Now, if you want to read Lauren's paper, it's a really great read. Just let me know, drop me a line, and I can share the link with you. Now, the self-reflection. So we just talked about how it was the glue for self-regulation for those Olympic, Paralympic and world champs. Now, this is something you can do straight away if you're not doing already. And it's using this line of questioning. You can see step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this is based on the Gibbs reflective tool, and we call it just the self-reflection tool. Now, this is something you can do after training, after competition. You can use this line of questioning to unpack, how did you go? What could you do better? What's your action plan next time round? You know, like our top athletes. So what you can do is think back. You can do that even today using this line of questioning. You know, what was your last training? What was your last game? And you can describe that in that first step. In the second step, you can say, well, how did you feel before, during, and after? Did you feel prepared? You know, did you feel recovered? You had good nutrition, hydration. How did you feel during? You know, were you nervous? Did you feel confident? How did you feel after? You know, did I have a good game or not? The step 3 is the really important step. So it's looking really pragmatically at how you went in that event. So what worked well? So it could be, hey, you know, I was dribbling really well, I was shooting pretty well, but what didn't work well? Okay, I felt pretty fatigued early on. Maybe that's something I need to look at. Maybe I need to look at, you know, I wasn't hydrated enough, or I hadn't had enough nutrition. So those 2 questions are critically important. That sets you up for what did you learn out of the experience? But then importantly, what are those potential solutions to meet those gaps that you've identified that you had in that training or that competition? And that then sets you up for your action plan. So what are you going to do in preparation for next time? So this is something you can do after, as I shared, after any training, any competition. And the neat thing is you can put these into your goal plan that we're going to talk about today, but you can have this, and we're going to give you a resource a little bit later that we'll email out to you. Christy's going to do it. You've got this template. You can put it on your fridge. You can put it in a workbook, and you can use it. And really important, because a lot of our finest athletes, this is exactly what they do. They keep diaries, they're meticulous, they're doing this time and time again. And I know Lauren, that I spoke about before, this is what she did. That's the key. So once you've identified, I guess, where you might have some gaps and things you want to work on, you want to put in that action plan. And it's really important as an emerging basketballer, you really need to know where you're heading. You know, what is your end goal? How are you going to get there? That's critically important. And at this time with COVID, this is an opportune time for you to have a look at what your plan is. You might already have a plan, but you might have to review your plan because you haven't been able to train, you know, on court or compete. So this is an opportune time to revisit it. So when you've got an end goal, so that top goal, say you want to play at the Olympics, you've got to have lots of other goals underpinning that, because you can't play at the Olympics straight away. You've got to have some, you know, short and medium term goals, those stepping stones to get there, and that's critically important. And you can see that in this diagram. There's our success, but you've got to have these stepping stones, and they're called your short and medium term goals, and this one's called your end goal. Now, the important thing about having an action plan with these goals is that, you know, it provides you a strategy, your own game plan about your development and supporting where you want to go. It increases your motivation. It helps with your learning and development. It keeps you on track to where you want to go, and it supports your confidence. So every time you tick off a step, you're feeling pretty good about yourself because you're one step closer to your ultimate goal. So it's got lots of really great benefits, setting goals and having an action plan. Now, when you set goals, and you might have heard of it before, there's an analogy called SMART. So S-M-A-R-T. And this is just to help you to set really effective goals. And we use this a lot, and you probably see it at school and sport. So we want to make sure when we set short-term goals or medium-term goals or even end goals, we want to make sure that the S, it's specific. So S stands for specific. So it's specific to what part of your preparation, what part of your technical skills that you want to work on, or even your preparation. It has to be measurable. So it allows you to ascertain whether you're tracking towards your goal and whether you've achieved it. That's really important. It has to be action-based. So once you identified the goal, you've got to understand, well, how are you going to get there to achieve that goal? And that can be things that you do. It could be someone that you talk to. It could be about getting more knowledge in an area. It's got to be realistic. So it can't be too unattainable. It's got to be something that you can achieve pretty readily, but still has to be challenging. And also it has to be time limited. So you can't keep these goals going forever. You've got to set a time frame to achieve those goals, to keep you honest to achieve those goals as well, and give you a date to review your progress. Now, what I've done is I've done a bit of homework for you, and I've put a goal setting worksheet together for you that you guys can use straight away. And this will be in the resource that Christy will send out to you. And in it, what I have done is I have weaved in all those SMART principles in here, so you don't have to worry about it. It's all in here, which is great. And so this is our goal setting worksheet. And as you can see, you put in your goal statement, what you want to achieve. Secondly, how will this goal benefit you? You put that in the second one. Then you put in this table, what actions and steps are needed to achieve the goal. Who and what can assist you? So it could be talking to someone, or it could be looking online and getting more knowledge in a particular area. And then importantly, what's your start date? When are you going to start working towards that goal, and what's your finish date? And then finally, how will you know you reached your goal? You know, what is that going to look like? So a great thing for you guys to do is to straight away, even today after this session, use this template once you get it, and write down your goals to focus on through the lockdown period. So I reckon you guys being online for the last 3 days, you've probably heard some amazing tips. Now, this is a way to put those tips into action, you know, putting them down into goals. So think about what you've learned and think about how you might be able to implement the great things you've learned the last 3 days and put them into action. What I recommend is that with this sheet, you might want to print off, say, 3 sheets. And, you know, we talked about that profile before. It's very holistic, a lot of things that you need to help with development and get to the top. You can have one goal sheet specific to your mental skills. So it might be, for instance, how am I going to work on my mindfulness, or how I'm going to work on my visualization. Another worksheet could be about your physical skills. So it might be, you might be working on some core stability of your abdominals, or some range of movement, some flexibility. And your technical skills, you could do another worksheet for that. So that could be, you know, shooting a 3-pointer under pressure at home, or, you know, your dribbling skills or your passing skills. So I really suggest you guys strongly do a worksheet that's specific, one for mental, one for physical, and one for technical. And you don't need to be limited to that. You might put in other aspects as well. Now, this is great. Once you've done your worksheet, this is a really good opportunity for you to connect with your coach and say to the coach, hey, look, I've put these goals together in this COVID period at the moment. I'm working on, what do you think? So it'd be really great to get your coach's feedback if you can as well. And they can support you in achieving your plan. And then the most important thing is put your plan into action. So straight away, pop it into action. And then, as we shared, evaluate how you're going and adapt and progress if you need to. So as I touched on, we've put together a really cool workbook that talks about self-regulation, and you guys are going to get it emailed to you. Christy's going to send it out. And in there, I've got some tips from Lauren's work. I've got that template for goal setting. I've got the template for the self-reflection loop, and some great tips in there about visualization that I touched on before. So keep an eye out for that in your email. Now, just to finish off, we're pretty close to finishing, but this is an opportune time to look at and revisit your knowledge. You know, what does it take to be a great basketballer? And there's some really fantastic resources out there to build your knowledge at this point in time. So I couldn't recommend enough NSWIS, so New South Wales Institute of Sport. They put their high performance at home web pages together. And in there's some really fantastic resources about nutrition and hydration and psychology and strength and conditioning. So lots of really great things. And the cool thing is a lot of athletes are doing these and sharing them, you know, online with you guys. Another website you can go to is my own website at the Office of Sport. So we've got a Pathways and Development website, and we've got a dedicated page for emerging athletes just like you guys. So if you go in there, there's some really great helpful advice in there. But what I've done too is put together really the very best of resources that I could find that covers all these themes. So I've got resources there from the Australian Institute of Sport, from the Australian Olympic Committee, from the Aspen Play Institute in the US, from the International Olympic Committee. So have a look. There's some really great resources that you guys can go into and really help build your knowledge and then apply it. Okay, one of my final points is, and Lauren found this in her research, not only is mindset important to help you with your journey and to perform at the very top, but a lot of you touched on it in the first exercise we did. And it's about having great support networks around you. That's critically important, not just important for sport, but important for life as well. And particularly in such a challenging time at the moment with the COVID lockdown. And I couldn't impress upon you how important it is to stay connected and supported. That's critically important. So some key tips from me based on Lauren's work is find someone to laugh with and enjoy some fun together. Now, this is a key finding of Lauren's work. Now, she spoke to those top athletes. Now, what they said was key to keep them going was having time out, having a laugh with someone and looking at the lighter side of life. That's really, really important. And this is something you guys could do, you know, if it's your buddy that you could mix with, or it could be online, you know, doing a regular Zoom and just having a good laugh. Regularly touch base with who you need to support you. And that's your parents, your coach, your friends, and someone you look up to as well. Everyone is here to support you because we understand it is a very challenging time. And we're all in this together, and we really want to support you the very best we can. And I guess it's really important for you guys to really communicate openly, you know, to these people, because we're here to support you. So speak up and share how you're going, how you're feeling, and know that we are here to support you. We can help you out. That's critically important. So I just want to finish off with a video I've put together that has got some tips, and it's probably some tips that you've gleaned over the last 3 days and some of the things I've touched on. And this is actually on our website. So I'll just play this for you now. It's a tips for emerging athletes in lockdown. Awesome. The sound quality was a little bit suspect. So if you want to watch that video again, go to our Pathways and Development website where all those resources were that I showed you, and you can watch this video again. And I guess I got a bit creative with the COVID lockdown. So this is some of the animations I've been putting together. So hopefully you got something out of that video as well. Well,
question, Juanita, is the Pathways and Development website in the book that we're going to be emailing out?
It's not, but maybe I can pop it in, Christy. That's a great idea. Great. I can do that.
Or just in the wording of the email, and then I can add that.
Absolutely.
To the email.
Absolutely. So look, thanks guys for joining in. It's so fantastic to see all your faces. Wish you the very, very best. Enjoy the journey. And
I do have a couple of questions, Juanita, if that's okay.
Yes, Christy, for sure.
Mia's asked, what is the strategy for when you and your team get negative on the court?
Oh, that's a good strategy. Gosh, that's a good question, isn't it? I think you've got to be kind to each other. And look, you're learning together. So you've got to be positive with your interactions. I think, disappointments and setbacks, that's key. It's how you respond, as I said earlier. So something you can work on in training, what was the issue within the game? Think about it in training, talk to the coach and work on it. But I think most importantly, I'm about positive culture and being kind and respectful to your teammates. So always be positive. You're on the journey together. It's critically important.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, Christy. And I would always look at the things that have worked. What has worked and be positive about that, and then put in an action plan and work on those things that didn't quite gel, and work on in training on those things.
You also talked about creating a routine. Someone wanted to know how you can create a routine. How do you do that in times like this, especially with COVID and routines have gone out the window?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Look, I was thinking about that question today, and my routine, I guess, before I do presentations and meeting, and doing an online thing. So I thought about what I do. I do a lot of rehearsal. I think about what I'm actually doing. So presenting and thinking about that, I'll visualize that, but obviously rehearse and prepare and go through it well and truly before I actually deliver it. And look, sometimes, I can have a negative self-talk too. So it's shutting that out and just being positive and always having a positive growth mindset to things, because sometimes there will be that negative self-talk, and you've got to just stop that and look at the positives and think about, I thought about what an awesome opportunity to connect with you guys, and how that's incredibly positive. So it's preparation for something like that. So those key things, it could be, I get hydrated, good nutrition, you've got a plan in your head. You might even wear a lot of athletes have their own, secret sock, that they might wear, or their clothing, or they got some thing that they do that they think is key to how they're going to perform. And I think the most important thing is you don't follow everyone's routine. You've got to work out your own routine, and what works for you is critically important.
I know even in my own children's lives, they just operate differently. One likes to get up early, one likes to sleep in, one performs better in the afternoon, one better in the morning.
Absolutely. So it's got to be very individualistic, Christy, hasn't it? Otherwise,
totally.
It's not going to work.
One
and you
final
try
question,
it over again. Yeah.
If that's okay. And this has affected a lot of our athletes this year, is what happens when your goals get cancelled? So there's a lot of kids that have set goals to make teams or to get to certain programs, and those programs have been cancelled. It's kind of like their goals are pulled from underneath their feet.
It's very challenging. It's
a
very challenging time, but I think to understand, look, it's affected us all that way. We're all on the same page with that. And I think for me, thinking about how, and we talked about today, things that you can work on right now. There's a great opportunity right now to work on things that commonly when you're back at training and you're competing, you don't you mightn't have time to really flesh out, you know, your knowledge seeking and so forth. So I look at it as though it's an opportunity, and looking at the mindsets of our finest athletes, they see setbacks as opportunity. And they usually credit, you know, setbacks that we'd go, oh my goodness, like, you know, an injury. Most of us would think, oh, that would derail a lot of people. But a lot of athletes look back and go, you know what, that was a great opportunity because I could work on my mindset.
Yeah. So you can think about your form back, your goal setting spreadsheet, and you kind of look at it, reevaluate it, and think, okay, and then kind of refocus on something else.
Absolutely. And I guess that was the gist of today, Christy, is think about what you can work on right now at home to prepare you, and put it into action in your effective goal setting. That's key, Christy.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. We'll leave it there. Did you have any other final last words before we get going?
No, not at all, but just to say thank you. Stay healthy and safe. And we've got this, and we'll be back. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you on the course.